So
hi, Art.
The Art of Democracy is a national coalition of shows.
Yeah.
Started it in New York with a show that Steve Fredericks organized.
Okay.
He's a printmaker.
Okay.
He was president of the New York Society of Etchers.
Oh.
And in 2006, he invited me to be in a show
Okay.
called The Art of Persuasion.
The Art of Persuasion. Okay.
And at that show, we started talking about, what's next.
Right.
We immediately thought, okay, let's try to do something with printmakers around the country.
Yes.
And so we reached out, because we're both printmakers, we reached out to printmakers first.
Yeah.
And then started to feel like, okay, there's a bigger world of anger out there that we can touch. And so reach out and touch some anger.
Tap into.
So that's what we aspired to do. And we started making connections. The first major connection was both the Meridian Gallery here in San Francisco.
Wow.
He'd already has a National Arts Club in New York.
Okay.
And then in Chicago, we got the Loyola University Museum of Art to do a new version of the Art of Persuasion show.
Wow.
As the Art of Democracy.
Okay, so that's where this transformed, this art.
From the Art of Persuasion. From a small show with maybe 20 artists.
20 artists, wow.
Now, how many artists are in this one?
In this particular show, there are, I believe there are 45 artists.
45. And then across the country, you said there's how many?
Across the country, there are 53 shows.
Yeah,
Now,
that's huge.
this wall here behind me, this is all Art of Democracy posters. These posters come from, this is from Chicago Printmakers Collaborative. They're doing a show. This is from New York, Berkeley, artist in Florida.
What's it called, abuse? Have you had any weird, threats or any strange negative attention from this?
Not personally, no.
Okay.
Nothing yet. The shows have really just started to open.
Yeah.
I think it's, ignore is the main thing.
That's right.
With any kind of dissent. So it's ignored to a point, and then if they get angry, that's a good thing.
Right.
Anger is good with political art. Why is anger good? Why is that the emotion?
Oh, it wasn't so much that anger is good, as that anger certainly produces a lot of art. I mean, I was talking to someone today about the idea that a lot of the artists in a lot of the shows around the country never consider themselves to be political artists.
Mm-hmm.
They suddenly felt that they had to do something political.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not because they're content. So that desire to do something political comes out of anger.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of artists, there's a very interesting dynamic with, it's gone. There was a poster here, it was the Statue of Liberty that said vote.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a print of it.
Oh, good. Check
There's
it
a
out.
poster of it too. But, vote like your life depends on it.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it really
But then
does.
there's also this sentiment, or this sentiment, which is,
Right.
does it matter? I mean, you're both owned by corporations.
That's right. How much power do we really have? Mm.
Yeah, and there's a lot of political art with this sentiment.
Yeah.
It's not exactly futile, but
Right.
it's saying, we're way outside the mainstream American culture, and the mainstream American culture is nuts, right? I mean, behind you there's some great images of that, like this. Ignorance is strange.
Yeah.
Corporate rule of everything. Better living through martial law. A lot of the art is, but I think these are the traditional political artists.
Sure. Yeah.
There's the political artists who are saying, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm outraged. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
That suddenly decided they had to do something.
Yeah.
That comes from a much different sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed there's two extremes to political art. There's shock and anger and sort of what I define as preaching to the choir, which I don't think would get someone who, if a person who, I'm trying to think of something to point out right now, but someone who did something blatant and would probably piss off the other side and divided them.
Robbie Connell sort of made his mark on the world of political art.
Yeah, so something like that.
Grossly distorted political figures.
Yeah, and so someone who was pro Arnold Schwarzenegger wouldn't even give this the time of day.
Right.
And then there's the other side of political art, which is the emotional political art, which is
I
like,
think something like this.
I think comes from the people who don't realize they're doing it. It's just it's not out of a propaganda side, it's out of a life side or something. That's what I've noticed anyway.
But it's partially, I think, how clear the message that they want to communicate is. A lot of political art is just sort of like, gosh,
right.
but it's not specific to anything. It's kind of this generalized anger, and that's where I think political art doesn't really work. It has to have a point of contact.
Mm-hmm.
So what is that point of contact? I mean, in the show we tried to pick work. Well, this show is not the same as all the shows. All the shows aren't focused on war and empire. This show is specifically focusing on war and empire.
Okay.
So the work that we picked tried to go through this range of street artists to gallery artists to very established artists and people who actively avoid being established artists.
Right.
We tried to make this whole range and try to focus on, their interests in combating war.
Yeah.
Interests in art.
Yeah.
But this kind of apocalyptic vision, I think, is another interesting aspect of political art. A kind of end of world, destructive imagery. There's no hope in this image unless you're a Condoleezza Rice fan.
But are those the fans jumping up there? Why are they jumping?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
They're happy that the world's gone.
It's like the election, right? I mean, cheering the complete destruction of
everything. Drill, right? Baby.
I think that kind of apocalyptic art is a strand of political art. And that piece behind you is another kind of apocalyptic art. I mean, this is like, this was a piece that was done by a group of people as a kind of collaboration. There's two principal artists, but they put it up in a gallery and they just have people sort of contribute things to it.
Oh, awesome. Like the viewers
started to build into something, and then the two guys finished it off.
Wow.
But I think it really contains that sort of rage and hopelessness.
Yeah.
Almost demonic hopelessness of just all these apocalyptic images of Rumsfeld.
So, you as a viewer, what do you take away from that?
I take away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas, what do I take away from these?
Yeah.
These are sort of classic leftist posters.
Yeah.
Which is kind of empowering.
Right.
Solidarity.
Yeah.
And empowerment of, in this case, victims of war. In this case, American victims of war spending policies.
Yeah.
Right.
And behind you again over here,
there's so much here.
It's a pretty huge show.
It is. These guys right here? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a recruiting poster for 1984. Ingsoc was the 1984 name of, there were like 2 countries in the world, or 3 blocks in the world.
The Orwell novel you're speaking. Wow.
And Ingsoc was the name of our side.
Wow.
So this is basically an idea of just the sort of apocalyptic world that Orwell portrayed.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of this sort of pop cultural references that are kind of disempowering.
Yeah.
But they're very, they're very cutting. These reworkings of pop cultural magazines, I think, are very telling of what they're saying and working on you. It's different.
Yeah.
I think one of the interesting things about political art is that it's got so many different approaches. There's the sort of classical leftist poster art, but then there's sort of rage art.
Yeah.
And then there's this kind of pop art. It's a little bit sarcastic.
There's some humor there,
or tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of safety in that, too.
Yeah, actually.
For the artist and the viewer.
Yeah. It's like they're taking they're taking the tools that are used against them and flipping them around and using them for their doing.
And it's presented in the same way
that it would be presented to them.
Sort of a propaganda.
It's very
of corporate
propaganda.
America
Yeah.
is presented to us.
So yeah.
So it's got this.